Well, we get it rolling on the Krueger Show on Friday, May the 19th, 2023. We are brought to you by Pig in a Pickle. Check out Pig in a Pickle. Awesome barbecue spot. Two locations, Corte Madera and Emeryville. They're open in Marin County 7 days a week from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m., Wednesday through Sunday in Emeryville. Pig in a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Well, we're talking Niners on this Friday. Beautiful Friday. Rookie minicamp in the rear view. OTAs around the corner will get started next week. We'll be down in Santa Clara watching the guys practice. But joining us today to talk Niners is the great Jack Hammer, who is phenomenal. And, of course, Santa Rosa Press Democrat. He's got his own YouTube show, and he is with us. What's up, Jack? How are you? Good morning.
Hey, how you doing, Larry? I'm doing good. It's Friday. Can't wait for next week with OTAs.
Yeah, it's going to be great. And, I'm so glad that we did that. We're doing this today because our good friend, both of our friends, Matt Barrows from The Athletic, interviewed Patrick Mahomes' quarterback coach, the quarterback guru, Jeff Christensen, who's worked with, a lot of different quarterbacks, but spent time in Dallas this offseason working with Trey Lance and Patrick Mahomes. And Christensen, interesting piece. He told Matt that he can generally diagnose what's wrong with a quarterback's delivery within 1 day. 1 day of working with a quarterback, he knows what the issue usually is. But with Trey Lance, it took 4 days. And this report I thought was really interesting because Christensen said that Lance's retooled motion eliminated his ongoing arm fatigue, which kind of confirms that story, I think originally broken by Mike Silver, which I thought was preposterous at the time, but now it sounds like it was actually legitimate that Lance had ongoing arm fatigue, largely due to his mechanics. And I guess the arm fatigue is something that's plagued Trey ever since his first training camp with the Niners. So Barrows is reporting that by the time Christensen and Lance worked out, by the time they were done working out together and working on his motion, that Lance went from needing to take a day off after every 3 days of intense workouts to waking up one day and the arm soreness was gone. It was no longer an issue. And I guess Christensen found the root of the issue. Lance's accuracy, I guess, has since improved. His spin on the football has improved, and they're saying his delivery time has become shorter. Christensen credited Lance with being, eager to learn and to push himself through, a difficult phase of learning and trying to adapt. The quote he had that I thought was interesting: "It's a different feeling. It can be kind of weird, and it all can be kind of scary. And so it's a whole different feeling when the ball leaves your finger." To his credit, he slowly kept applying and kept believing. He's really fit right in. Talking about Patrick Mahomes, he said, Pat really thinks the world of him. He's just a really good person, conscientious. He wants to be great. And he's one of the few kids whose actions match his words. He backs it up. He shows up every day. He wants to learn. And that's why I teach him. And then Christensen finished up by saying that, quote, he was 25% ahead of where I thought he would be, referring to Lance, by the time they finished. And then he went on to say he thought he could be incredible in Kyle's offense. And, who knows? Maybe Lance will go back to Christensen after the OTAs and continue to work and get better. And then, it's just good to see that, what we already knew, that Trey's got great work ethic, great desire, and we all know he has natural athletic ability. The question is, did Christensen unlock something in the quarterback that will now, be a substantial development? What do you think?
That's what the 49ers need to hope, right?
Yeah.
We've seen this before. There's no quarterback guru that's going to come back out after and say, yeah, I worked with this guy and he sucks.
Right.
So that's not going to happen. But the nice part about this for Lance is that you're hearing this from Christensen, but you've also heard it, and I think Matt Barrows pointed this out in his piece. You also have heard that from the 49ers. Kyle Shanahan mentioned, that he's looked better. I think what he said was he's the best he's looked since they've had him, I think is what he said during the Dwight Clark event. So what Christensen's saying and what Shanahan's saying, that's good. And it's all pointing in the right direction for Trey Lance in terms of his motion and what we're hearing. I think and that's good. So just kind of keeping it on the positive tip, it's all in a positive direction as far as his motion and the way it looks today.
Right. Yeah. I mean, but here's the other part of this. And, there was a terrific piece in The Athletic a few years ago that I looked up this week. How much can a quarterback prospect's throwing mechanics really be changed? And this question was being discussed in 2019. And here was a quote from Kyle Shanahan. If a guy throws a certain way, and you think we're going to teach him at age 23 to throw it differently, he might do it in practice and might do it in drills. But you throw him into an NFL game in the heat of a battle, and he's going to resort to who he is and what he's always done. So that seems to be almost like Shanahan saying, you know what? I don't believe in the development, that curve that potentially happens between 19 and 23. But is that maybe just a general thought on quarterbacks? Is it possible that Lance is kind of the exception to the rule simply because of the fact that he's only thrown 400 passes since high school, that he really only had 1 year of competitive football since high school? Do you think that maybe, Kyle's thoughts are his thoughts, but maybe maybe Lance is the exception to the rule? What do you think?
And again, that's where the 49ers need to hope, right? They need to hope that he will be the exception to the rule. I put this out on Twitter earlier today, and a lot of people are bringing up examples. And yes, you can point to Josh Allen. Josh Allen is an exception to the rule. He is a guy that has definitely improved. There's others that haven't. I think in that same article, the one that really sticks out to me was the quote later on from Saints head coach, well, now with Denver, Sean Payton, where he said, I'd be a little guarded if we're going to improve the mechanics so that he can be more accurate. That would make me a little more nervous than he's accurate, but his mechanics are a little different. And then he goes on to point to, Phillip Rivers, who at the time, who was a very accurate quarterback, but had one of the goofiest looking motions that you could think of when it came to a quarterback. So it's a little bit of both.
He's pushing back. He's pushing back, saying you can't really change emotion to make a guy more accurate. You can take a guy who's already accurate and try to tweak his motion, is what he's saying.
Well, what he's saying is, even if it doesn't, he's saying basically what he's saying is if the guy's already accurate, he's going to be accurate. The change of throwing motion isn't necessarily going to be what makes a quarterback accurate. Quarterbacks, there's different all times of things that go into this. And the biggest piece with what Shanahan said, and that's why, I said we'll have to wait and see if Lance is the exception, is because he can look really good right now. He can look really good during OTAs when there's no live bullets around him, when it's 7-on-7. But what happens when you put an offensive and defensive line in front of him and he's getting pressure? And we'll see. The traits of Trey Lance can't be debated. We know that he has a big arm. We know that he's a hard worker. We know that he's a smart guy. We know all these things about him. But every quarterback that's ever been taken in the first round has those types of traits. That's why they're taken in the first round. So we'll see. Can he develop it? Can he get better? He's going to get a lot of reps this offseason. If he can stay healthy through training camp and all those kinds of things, there's a potential that he can win this job and be the guy. It's just a matter of him realizing the potential that the 49ers saw in him when they drafted him number 3 overall back in 2021.
I would say if you're in the camp of, wow, this is real positive, I think you're in the right camp. If you're in the camp of, oh, you know what? Now Trey Lance is going to be absolutely phenomenal. That's probably where I would say, you know what? I think what this is going to guarantee is that he's throwing with his proper mechanics as far as he won't have that arm fatigue. That's one. Sounds like it's already going in that direction. I also think he's going to throw a much better ball. You know what I mean? As far as a better spiral, a more consistent spiral, less of the high-speed wobble ducks, which with his arm strength, arm speed, and power, when he throws a duck, it's worse than sometimes a lesser armed quarterback who throws a duck because the wobble is so wild. You know what I mean? So if he throws a better, cleaner spiral, I think that's going to help his football become more catchable. I think you're going to have a low, it's going to lower his drop rate and hopefully improve his accuracy. But overall, I think accuracy has a lot to do also with the ball coming out on time. And the one thing about Purdy that was so impressive this last year was not just the accuracy. It was the accuracy, touch, and timing. The three elements together. The accuracy, the unbelievable touch to fit it in over defenders, under defenders, in tight windows. But it also was the ball came out on time. And that's really, I thought, in the slants, in the shorter routes, the short game, that's where I thought Purdy really was almost a perfect fit for Shanahan's system, simply because if you throw the slant at the proper time, you can avoid the receiver taking a big hit. And we saw him make those adjustments, and you didn't see Brandon Ayuk take big hits, or really any of his receivers take huge hits on those in-breaking routes and the slants, because he threw it with the proper timing in addition to touch and accuracy. So to me, it all goes together. I think this is going to improve Trey's overall throwing mechanics, his health of his elbow, his shoulder, his arm. But I think it's also going to give him a tighter spiral, more consistent spiral, and make his ball more catchable, drop the drop percentage. But still, I still got to see the touch and the timing and the variety of throws. But still, very, very positive news for sure. And if there is one guy who I think could be the exception to Kyle's rule of, hey, look, by the time you're 23, you're developed, it could be this kid. Why? Because he is so inexperienced, and yet he's so talented and wants it so much that I think he's going to make the adjustments. Now, I think what Kyle's saying is, when the live bullets are flying and you're out there by yourself and taking that drop, and here come defensive linemen, you're going to resort back to whatever it was that you have the muscle memory with. So that's going to be on Trey to see if he can kind of reteach himself different muscle memory while still operating in this highly pressurized situation. But overall, I would say this is the most positive Lance related story that I've seen of the offseason. Where do you rank this? Am I overreacting?
No, I don't think you're overreacting. I think that it's a really positive. It's really positive news that his motion, this along with what we heard from Kyle Shanahan, you kind of start putting it all together. It sounds like he's looking really good, and that's really positive. I think on top of that, if you want to talk about the other positives, him attending Tight End U this year and actually going and participating is a big positive, because again, you already hit on it. The more reps, he needs throws. He needs to keep working, and the more throws that he gets, the better this stuff gets ingrained in him. It's a little bit harder when you're in your 20s and when you're a teenager, to really get this stuff all down and have it dialed in. It's kind of like anything else. That's why I think it was Grant who's talked about how by the time somebody gets to a certain age, they're already who they're going to be. So we'll see. And this is all positive. And then you get him out to Tight End U, and he gets to work with George Kittle. And, I would expect to see a lot too. And the other tight ends from the 49ers out there as well. And he's working with tight ends from across the NFL. I think all that stuff could be a big positive for him. And then we'll see if once you get to July and August, once you get the pass rush in front of him in training camp and all that, can he continue that? And that'll be the next step. And but for now, it's trending in the positive direction for Trey Lance.
No question. And it makes OTAs that much more juicy to watch coming up. As far as, I predicted that I thought, based on what I heard the Niners saying, that Trey would be dealt by the draft. Didn't happen. Rappaport kept saying, well, maybe this summer. Other people have said, well, maybe this summer. What do you think ultimately, how far down this road do you think I view Trey as a starter, and I view Brock as a starter. I don't know what to say about Darnold. We'll get to that in a second. But I view those two guys as starters. And I think the 49ers do as well. How long do you think they can go, Jack, with both guys on the roster before they would say, you know what, for everybody's good, we need to make a decision here? Do you think they've already made a decision? Do you think they want to make a decision this summer? Do you think they want to let this go for a year? Or is it going to be one of these things where Trey's never dealt, but just one day he leaves because his contract's up? I mean, how do you see the 49er quarterback room kind of playing out long term or eventually? How long could they go with Trey and Lance if indeed they're both on this starter trajectory?
Yeah, they could keep Lance and Purdy for the next 2 years because they have them both under contract. They're both going to, you add them together for what they're going to cost the 49ers next year, and it's right about $12 million, a little bit more than that. I mean, and we look at the quarterback rooms across the league, that's cheap. So if you're the 49ers, if it's, let's say Brock Purdy wins the job and Brock Purdy's the man going forward, they could keep, if they want, they could keep Brock Purdy as their starter and Trey Lance as their backup through this year and next year. The question is, do the 49ers decide to do that, or is there some way that they're going to be able to get something? Would they be able to get something for Lance in that scenario through a trade? And what's happening with Sam Darnold and the other backup quarterback situation, all that kind of stuff, it all kind of starts to play together. If you're looking at this long term for the 49ers, and it depends on what your choice is. Do you think that the best option for your team is to continue to keep this very strong core together? Or do you have a quarterback in Trey Lance, who is elevating everybody else above what they've done? And we haven't seen that with him yet. I don't know if we've really totally seen that with Brock Purdy yet either. But from a salary cap perspective, if Brock Purdy proves himself to be the guy, that's the best case scenario for the 49ers when it comes to keeping this core together, because they have him locked in for 3 more years at under $1 million or less, right around that total, compared to Lance, who's going to be 11.3 next year. And then if after that, bringing him back on a deal to bring him back as a backup would be tough. So, if they were going to hold him off, they'd probably have to use his 5th-year option after the season. That's going to be over $20 million. So it just kind of depends on their long-term plan and their long-term, trajectory. Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch have talked about seeing the value of having a quarterback on a very team-friendly deal. That leans more towards Brock Purdy. So we'll have to see how it plays out.
So, I mean, you said that would you say $8 million next year or $11 million next year?
For Trey Lance next year, I believe his cap hit is 11.3, 11.1, somewhere in that range.
So
it's over
the two of them you said would be a roughly $15 million combined.
No, not even that high, because Brock Purdy is going to be around 900 and something thousand. So you're looking at those two combined about $12 to $13 million. Totally manageable.
Would they keep Lance, do you believe, Jack, as the number 2 at that price? Quite a bit more expensive than their number 1 if Purdy ultimately won the job? Or do you think that if Purdy ultimately won the job, they would try to stay with Darnold as the 2 and go with try to move Lance on? What's your guess there?
Based on their track record, right? Their track record, you just look at what they did with Jimmy Garoppolo. They had Jimmy Garoppolo on as their backup last season, even though it was a restructured deal, and he was still more expensive than Trey Lance, and all the things that go on there. So it depends if they can get all the things done with their roster and have those two be 1 and 2, and then maybe draft a guy or whatever they do for number 3. That's I could see them possibly. That's why the 49ers are so interesting, right? They're not doing at the quarterback position what everybody else across the league is doing. They're getting it done with kind of doing it backwards in terms of salaries.
Isn't this amazing that the 49ers are this is a story that's the biggest story in the NFL. The 49ers are a Super Bowl contender. Quarterback is the ultimate position. It's the ultimate discussion point as well. And they have indecision at the quarterback spot and some unknowns. and yet they have a Super Bowl caliber roster, and they're one of the Vegas favorites to win the Super Bowl. I mean, it almost guarantees, it's like too good to be true for us this summer. I mean, to be honest, I mean, we are literally going to be sitting on a day-to-day basis in the epicenter of the biggest NFL story that exists.
Yeah,
I don't think it's overstating it, really.
No, and that's one of the things I put out yesterday. You know, there was you have the odds for NFL MVP, and the 49ers have two quarterbacks in the top 15 for potential awesome. NFL MVP award. Trey Lance and Brock Purdy. They're both right there, like 12 and 13 or whatever it is. So the fact that they have those two guys and and at such a low cost, it's a great situation for the 49ers. And I agree with Joey right here. Competition is great, and that's what the 49ers have said. And that's why, like the discussions that we've seen regarding Lance and Purdy and Sam, even throw in Sam Darnold. What is wrong with saying that any of those guys are going to compete? I don't understand. I don't understand the folks that are upset about a quarterback competition or any kind of a competition. I think it's great for this team.
Well, it is interesting. And Marv brings up a good question here too on the super chat. Thank you, Marv. He says, why are you guys only talking trading Trey and not Purdy coming off an injury, who has potentially carried a team, Lance or Purdy, weapons getting older? What, am I reading that wrong?
Well, I know what Marv is saying, I think, is, and this is something that I've heard quite a bit over this offseason. And, you know, why are we talking trading Trey and not Purdy coming off the injury? What he's saying is Lance has the potential to carry the team, whereas Purdy, not necessarily, because the weapons are getting older. There's a belief out there that Brock Purdy maximized who he is as a rookie last season. He's not going to get better. He's not going to be able to carry the team once guys like, you know, Kittle and Debo or Ayuk or whatever leave. And my response to that is, I don't know. It depends on the discussion you have, because the same people that are telling me that I've heard say this, that Lance has the potential to carry Purdy, to carry the 49ers roster when they don't have the good weapons around them, are typically the same people that have said that you can't compare Lance to Purdy because Lance didn't have player X, Y, and Z, George Kittle and Christian McCaffrey in particular.
Yeah, I mean, if people, we're so tantalized by upside and ceiling in our society that we're looking away from the bird in hand, which is the quarterback that's winning. And I just find all of that really comical. But he's right, Marv. You are right in that we haven't really discussed with any seriousness any viability of trading Brock Purdy. We've only discussed the viability of trading Trey Lance, simply because there's only three quarterbacks. Darnold just got here, and the 49ers have, the owner, the general manager, and the head coach have all come out and said, you know, all things being equal, Brock's our number one guy. So that as the premise, I think you're right. We haven't entertained the idea that Trey could come back, take this job, win it completely, and then the 49ers would be sitting with two quarterbacks. And if they chose him, and I'm not even counting Darnold yet, let's just say between Purdy and Lance, they've got two viable starting quarterbacks. And if Lance took the job, then yeah, Purdy would be the guy who potentially would be dealt. And I think it's viable if Lance overwhelmingly took that job and proved to everybody that he was their best guy and they went with him. Yeah, I think the same thing that I'm saying about Trey, I would say about Brock, which is they're not going to just say, Brock, you're sitting there, man, you're number two forever. No, they're going to trade him. They're going to trade him to somewhere else and get something significant. So that's pretty much why we haven't. It's that the Niners have kind of put Brock out there as their number one. And so all trade discussion has been really about Trey. And that's why if you type in Trey or trade in Google, you'll find all kinds of things. But if you type in Brock Purdy trade, you'll probably find nothing, because really nobody has speculated on a Purdy trade, because we've kind of expected, based on what they've told us, that Purdy's going to be the number one guy. But I will say this, you know, everything's volatile. The one thing about the NFL, nothing stays the same. You either get better or you get worse. You get healthier or you get more injured. You get young. You don't get younger. Everybody gets older. And so it's, we'll see. We'll see. And it's on this summer. And as I said to Jack, this is the epicenter now of the biggest story in the NFL. All right, let's get to topic number 2 on my list. And that is in the latest feature of in his latest feature on, was it like 32nd, what's 32nd franchise or 33rd something? Mike Martz, whoever Mike Martz is working for, he predicted the top 5 offenses in 2023, and Martz has the 49ers in the number 1 offense in the entire league. He's got obviously great respect for Kyle Shanahan. He calls him the best offensive mind in the NFL. And here's what Martz had to say. So the 49ers will be the top offense because they're a step ahead of everyone else. Even without a star quarterback last season, they scored a lot of points, 26 per game, 6 most in the league. I love what Shanahan does and how they approach the quarterback position. He then went on to add, when you look at what they do with the quarterbacks, how ahead of the curve they are with their formations and how they run the ball, there's no question about it. Then this is the one that the discussion point. He goes on to say, and he goes on to make a prediction about which of the 3 quarterbacks he thinks will start. Are you familiar with this article?
I'm familiar with everything you've talked about. I haven't read the article, but I'm familiar enough with what Mike Martz has been saying that it's all making sense.
Well, if you remember, Mike Martz was the guy who was like totally ripped the hell out of Trey Lance last year, and he's like, I don't know, I don't see what he does good. He right. Doesn't throw well, he doesn't throw accurately, he doesn't have a good motion, he's not fast, he's not. I mean, it was like he eviscerated him in an evaluation. Yeah. But this is what he said about the Niner quarterbacks. He says, I believe Sam Darnold will start. Yes. He was a highly talented guy coming out of college. He was put in a couple of tough situations with the Jets and Panthers. Now he's with a solid offensive staff and a coach who's brilliant with quarterbacks. The 49ers are an extremely talented team, and Darnold being the starter would be a good thing. They are primed for a great season. Martz went on to throw the Chiefs, Lions, Eagles, and Bills as the other top 5 offenses. So what do you think? I mean, he likes Sam Darnold, who was the 3rd pick overall in the 2018 draft. And I will say this. I mean, last season with the Panthers, Sam Darnold had a career high 92.6 passer rating. And I kind of viewed him as an insurance policy against Purdy's injury and Lance's development. But other people see him as far more than that. What do you think of Martz's evaluation that Darnold is going to be the guy?
Well, let me kind of go back through kind of everything that you've been talking about here. First off, in terms of Martz saying that the 49ers offense would be number 1 in the league or has a potential, whatever it is there, he's absolutely right there. If you just look at what they did over the last 10 weeks of the regular season, and then, even into the first beginning of they had a quarterback that was competent, which was throughout from the Rams game on. They were blowing it out in terms of the number of points that they were putting up. So you got so much talent. Christian McCaffrey said this. I don't know if that's a topic that you have up later, but Christian McCaffrey was on with NFL Network, I think it was this morning, and he basically said, he steps into the huddle and he sees George Kittle and Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel and all these guys, and it's basically like being in the huddle of the Pro Bowl. And this offense has a ton of talent, and then you have a coach who knows how to pull the trigger, and it's all right there. This is a tremendous offense. If right tackle is all sorted out, this offense has the ability just to continue rolling like they did last season. So that's the first part of that. And then in terms of Sam Darnold, I'm not sure. We'll see. I'm looking forward to seeing what Sam Darnold does in OTAs, in minicamp, and in training camp. This is a guy who has high-end traits, just like the other quarterback that we talked about earlier in Trey Lance. He has high-end traits, and he's performed well at times, and so we'll see. I mean, you look at what Sam Darnold did in Carolina in 2021. Just take yourself back to that point. In 2021, the first 3 weeks of the season, playing with Christian McCaffrey and Moore as his wide receiver. Those were the 2 best players on that team. That offense isn't even filled out the way the 49ers are, right? But in those first 3 weeks of the season, he averaged over 68% completions, He averaged over 300 total yards per game. He averaged 2 touchdowns per game, and he averaged less than a turnover per game. The Panthers were 3-0 to start the season. They ended up the season 5-12. And one of the other pieces with that, if you're kind of like myself and you want to say, that doesn't necessarily meet all the criteria, you could say, well, part of it might have been because they had a new head coach and they had a new office system. The NFL wasn't ready for them yet. And that's fine. You can easily point to that. And what I'll say is the NFL has proven that they haven't caught up to Kyle Shanahan either. Kyle Shanahan, his offenses regularly have guys running wide open all over the field, and it's just a matter of the quarterback getting the ball out on time and hitting the receiver on time and all those kinds of things. We'll see. The traits that he possesses are there. Can you put it all together? And that's the question. Just like it was with Trey Lance.
Yeah, I don't know. To me, Trey Lance has traits, but no track record. Sam Darnold has traits, but a track record, and his track record isn't good. So now can the 49ers somehow, with a better surrounding cast, take away a lot of the negative that was attached to Darnold? Some. I mean, when a quarterback fails, some of it's probably on him. Some of it might be on his O-line. Some of it could be on his weapons, his receivers, his runners. Some of it could be on the play caller. There's a lot of people involved in the whole process. And you were just talking about, the quarterback's just the head. And so oftentimes we react to the head, or everything's about the head, but it's not necessarily about the head. It could be any number of factors. But I guess because Darnold's had, 4 years in the NFL to kind of find his way, and it hasn't happened, color me skeptical. I'm going to be that guy. I'm going to be the skeptical guy on Sam Darnold, just because I got to see it. It's like with Trey, it's a much more of like a blank slate. So for him to have traits and potential, that to me is normal. He's played 4 games, but for Sam Darnold to be in year 5 and we're still talking about, well, he's got these traits and those traits, who the hell cares? He hasn't been able to do it. Whether the ball comes out on time or not, he turns it over too much. He throws too many interceptions. He fumbles too much. Is that because the Jets' offensive line was bad? Maybe. Is that because Carolina didn't have good enough receivers? Maybe. You know what I mean? How much of it's Sam versus the Jets and the Panthers? I'm sure some of it is Jets, Panthers, but I think some of it's Sam. Where with Trey, I just think I have more hope for his, kind of breakthrough than Darnold's breakthrough. I mean, that's what both of those guys are searching for. They're talented guys who are searching for a breakthrough. And if I had to gamble every dollar I had on one of them, I'm betting on Trey over Sam. How about you? Where would you wager there?
Well, it's a really fun conversation because I get it. You have the negative experiences of what Sam Darnold has done in the past to draw from, and you don't have that with Lance. So I get it. I totally understand that part. The other side I'll say is if you followed the 49ers for any length of time, if you were a 49er fan in 2010, you did not think you wanted Alex Smith to get the hell out of San Francisco in 2010. You wanted nothing to do with Alex Smith in 2010. This guy was awful. He sucks. Get him out of town. He's no good. He had played 87 games by the end of that season, turned the ball over all over the place. I don't know if it was 87 games, but he played a lot of games, had a lot of turnovers, very Sam Darnold type of numbers. In comes Jim Harbaugh, and all of a sudden, the guy plays at a very high level. The 49ers get all the way to the NFC Championship game, maybe even would have won the NFC Championship game if they had any wide receivers other than Michael Crabtree on that team, and didn't have a guy that fumbled 2 punts. So you kind of look at that as the positives. So and his situation was very similar, right? The situation of Alex Smith, he had different offensive coordinators every year. The head coaches were a mess, very similar in that regard. And then he got into it with a situation where it was a good one. So that's the positive. The negative of this kind of thing is it doesn't work with everybody, because there's guys like Josh Rosen who had all the traits and was awful with the Cardinals. The 49ers picked him up and he was awful here, and he never even made it past the third team, and they cut him like 2 weeks into training camp. And then you also have the former number one pick or top pick out in Jacksonville, the quarterback there, Blake Bortles, kind of a same situation, struggled all along, ended up with the Rams. He struggled. I mean, it's not 100% in either direction, but it's just a matter of, I don't know. I'm not here to sell you that Sam Darnold is going to be the guy. What I'm saying is I'm open to seeing what he can do in an environment that's going to be the best that he's been in. Yeah. And if he can come out and he can perform, that's awesome. And that's great. The only way that he should be above Trey Lance, though, is if he is clearly above Trey Lance. If the two are even close, then you roll with Lance because he's the guy that has more upside because of his age, even though they're both, 25 or less. So we'll see how it plays out.
It is amazing, though, how many football people with credentials, from Kyle Shanahan himself to Michael Lombardi to Mike Martz, who there, a number of different people have come out in support of Sam Darnold, saying that Sam Darnold is going to, Kyle said he's got as good a skill set as he's seen. It seems like there's always some NFL insider who's like, hey, don't sleep on Lance or don't sleep on Sam. He's coming. And yet we haven't really, outside of Christensen in this article coming out about his reworked motion, I haven't really heard any credible football person come out and say, I've heard a lot of fans come out and say it. I've heard a lot of content creators come out and say it, but I haven't heard any real football people come out and say, you know what? Trey Lance is going to be phenomenal. Christensen kind of did, but I haven't heard any NFL person attach their opinion to that. So we'll see. We'll see what it looks like this summer. I can't wait for it. It's going to be absolutely an awesome show every single day. And the beautiful part about it is we're going to get two sides. We're going to get the side that they tell us, like, hey, this is what we see. And then you and I are going to be standing right there going, well, this is what we see. And it's going to be phenomenal theater. And I hope that what they tell us we see and what I think we see is the same. Because if they tell us we're seeing awesomeness and we feel like we're not, that's when this thing's going to get really ugly, potentially.
And if I can really quick, just I was going to say was, on that whole thing where what we've heard from Shanahan and what we've heard from other people, what we've heard from Shanahan is accurate, right? He's got as good a skill set as anybody out there. He does. That's why he was taken where he was and all those kind of things. But what's different from what Kyle Shanahan has said and what you're hearing from everybody else that's not a member of the 49ers that's reporting on this, that are saying that Sam Darnold is going to be the guy. Watch him. He's going to be the starter week one, all that kind of stuff, is that Kyle Shanahan's never come close to saying that he's going to be the guy. He's never come close to saying he's going to be a starter. All he said is that they're excited about having him on their team, which I think he would say about any quarterback that they signed that has a bigger name, that they're excited to get the chance to work with them and all those types of things. So there's been so much speculation around this, and so much of it is coming from folks outside of the building. And I do think that Kyle Shanahan is looking forward to working with him. I don't necessarily think that he's expecting him to come in and be blow everybody out, away and be week one starter necessarily.
Brother Bob RLB2ESQ says, but I want to see Larry come with it like he did 2 days ago about dink and dunk. All right. I get, I don't know what there is to say other than people who say that Brock Purdy is dink and dunk don't know shit.
No, they don't.
Because that the numbers don't reflect that at all. No. And if you're saying that, I'd love to hear what you're using as statistical proof. Because to me, if you're going to say a guy's dink and dunk, what you're really saying is he doesn't drive the ball down the field. And if you're saying a guy doesn't drive the ball down the field, that means his yards per attempt would be low. But Brock Purdy's yards per attempt were 8.1 yards per attempt. That was second highest in the NFL. Then I went back and looked at what his number was at Iowa State. He averaged 8.3 yards per attempt. So he's basically the same guy in the NFL that he was at Iowa State, and his yards per attempt is really, really high. So the idea of dink and dunk is just like, why? Because he's diminutive? because he doesn't have you're looking at him and you can tell that he doesn't have Joe Flacco's arm, or he doesn't have the arm of a young Terry Bradshaw or something. So suddenly he's dink or dunk. That's illogical, because not only did the 49er offense went from, you just heard me say that they averaged 26 a game. Well, they averaged 33 a game with Brock. So that means they averaged a whole lot less than 26 a game with Jimmy and Trey. So they averaged more points, they averaged more yards, and Purdy had 8.1 yards per attempt, second in the NFL. That was a higher number than what Jimmy put out. That was a much higher number than what Trey put out in his small sample size. So this idea that Brock is dink and dunk is stupid. And I let it go for a couple days, but then eventually I'm like, you know what? I'm a football guy, and I'm going to put out things on this channel, not for clicks and not for crap, because it has football sense. It makes football, it's logical according to football and football numbers. And if you want to say, you say whatever you want to say, but if you want to say Brock Purdy's dink and dunk, you don't know football. So that's all I got to say, because the numbers don't reflect it. And at first I was like, I understand where that's coming from. But then I'm like, you know what? I'm sick of hearing this. Let me go look up the numbers, because I'm not the kind of guy that has every number at his fingertips, because I trust my eyes over numbers. But then I go to numbers to verify, that I'm seeing it the way I think I'm seeing it. And sure enough, I'm like, hey, you know what? In my eyes, Brock Purdy threw the ball better down the field than I saw the Niner quarterbacks in a long, long time do. So my sense of it was that his yards per attempt was going to be pretty high, and sure enough, it was. So the dink and dunk thing is just crap. Give me your thought.
Well, go ahead and pull up the super chat that you got over there from Ryan first, so that we can address it all together.
Where is it?
They just came in.
Oh, okay.
There should be a super chat over there on the right.
Let me get to the bottom here.
Sorry, because it's a great one, and
oh, here we go.
We've seen this a lot.
I'm on with Ryan. Yards per attempt does not equal the ability to go deep. Two different things. He's dink and dunk.
Yeah. So and I
Wow.
do. I agree. Let me say this.
Okay,
he's right in that he says yards per attempt doesn't equal the ability to go deep. He is right on that. Where this fails is the better stat to look at when you're talking about a quarterback throwing the ball down the field is their
air yards,
depth of target, or your air yards, either one, however you want to look at it. The average depth of target last year for Brock Purdy was 7.8. Joe Burrow's average depth of target last year, 7.6. Patrick Mahomes' average depth of target last year, 7.5. Jalen Hurts was 8.7. You just take and the reason I have those four is because those are the four who took their teams to the farthest, right? These are championship caliber quarterbacks in terms of their teams. Average depth of target was right there. You start to look at the percentage of passes where the target was greater than 20. It's the same thing. You get into the same kind of numbers. Percentage of throws greater than 20 yards. Jalen Hurts, 13. Brock Purdy, 11.6. Patrick Mahomes, 9.4. Joe Burrow, 9. So if you want to say the dink and dunk stuff, it's not. There's always going to be a dink and dunk factor to every offense, because you take the throws that are there for you. And I think that's the biggest thing with Brock Purdy. And where Brock Purdy excelled was he was able to get the ball down the field. He pushed the ball down the field when it was there. That's why he threw. When you look at his average depth of target against the Seahawks in the playoffs, it was over 12 in that game, because in that game, those deep throws were there. The timing was there for him to sit in the pocket and make those throws and all those kind of things. And then at the same time, he had the ability to take the check down, which obviously having Christian McCaffrey in the backfield with you helps with that. So he pushes the ball down the field. Then in the game against Dallas, his average depth of target against Dallas was 8.8. You look at the average depth of target in those two playoff games. They're high. They're the second highest of the quarterbacks in the playoffs. Of those four quarterbacks that I just mentioned, you look at their numbers in their playoff games, and it's Jalen Hurts is at the top with all of his averages, and Brock Purdy is number 2. The only reason Purdy in the championship game is 1.5 because he couldn't throw the ball after the first 2 throws. So dink and dunk, I don't know. Unless you're saying dink and dunk means that the guy hits the underneath throws and then hits the shot over the top as the dunk, That's Brock Purdy. That's also who Jalen Hurts was as well. Jalen Hurts was a very good deep ball thrower, and he was also
Dink and
very
dunk
good.
is a way to disrespect somebody and say they
I
can't throw
understand
the
that.
ball deep.
No, I understand that. I totally
And to
understand
me,
that.
I had a 49er scout before the Dallas playoff game in the pregame come up to me. He said, "Man, are you nervous?" I said, "Yeah, I am a little nervous. Dallas got a lot of speed, a lot of pass rush, but I feel good about the Niner offense." And he's like, "Oh, yeah, it's two different offenses." And I'm like, "What do you mean two different offenses?" He's like, "Oh, yeah, well, I mean, since Brock came in, we finally have a downfield passing attack." This was a 49ers scout, a guy who's paid a salary, said this to me. Now, granted, it was off the record, and I'm not going to reveal his name, but I mean, he said this to me with no pressure, no nothing. We were just chit chatting, in the press box before that game, and he's like, "Yeah, we have two different offenses now. We have an offense that actually can take shots down the field." He's like, "We had very little downfield passing attack under Jimmy Garoppolo over the last couple seasons, and if you look at the numbers, he's not wrong."
No, he's
So,
not. And then the other part of that, I mean, the other part of that too is, yeah, absolutely. You had that ability to open up the field because the quarterback was willing to take the throws. Those throws were always there. Jimmy Garoppolo just didn't take them. Brock Purdy, when they're open, he takes them at a higher rate. That's why his average depth of target was what it is. And you look at where Jimmy Garoppolo was, and he was still around 9 last year. Brock Purdy.
it's an odd. I'll say this. I mean, watching George Kittle become more valuable. Go talk to Brandon Ayuk, who's probably their biggest downfield threat as a starting wide receiver. He loves Brock Purdy. If Brock Purdy didn't have requisite arm strength and didn't have the ability to make plays down the field, do you think that Brandon Ayuk would love him? No, he wouldn't. But he does. So what does that tell you? Anyway, I don't want to get too far down that road because anybody who wants to hitch their wagon to Brock Purdy's dink and dunk, it's just gonna be a lot of unhappiness for you ahead. Let me get to a couple other topics. Oh, go ahead.
All right. I'll let. I was just going to say because that goes back to something somebody else. I mean, another person that used to be in the area wrote something on Twitter about how most fans outside of San Francisco don't understand how good Brock Purdy was last year, and I responded back to it. I quote to you: "Is I think most 49ers fans don't understand how good he was." The level of play that we saw at the quarterback position over the second half of last year was as high as we've seen in San Francisco over the last 6 years. It goes all the way. It's as high as we've seen since the
probably since Steve
season.
Young. I think it's probably higher, best we've seen, if you want to say decision making, since Steve Young himself. That'd be my opinion.
It was at a very high level.
Because the one thing about Brock is Brock had the guts to actually look downfield and make plays and take some chances, put the ball into tight windows. Where Alex Smith had some good days for sure, but he just never took those kinds of chances. All right, let's hit a couple other topics before we say goodbye. Marcelino McCrary Ball. I saw him last night at a dinner function I went to downtown. He is jacked, man. He is absolutely jacked. He's put on some good upper body weight. He's in incredible shape. That guy is going to bust out in a huge way. And I'm not saying that because I like him. I'm saying that because I believe in him. This guy was damn good in the preseason last year. This is going to be the guy that people are going to be like, wow. Aziz Shair, who? Marcelino McCrary Ball is going to bust out in a huge way this year. They got other linebackers, D. Winters, Jalen Graham, and they're all pretty good, to be honest. And they got some great special team guys, too. But McCrary Ball, Jack, I think is, he could have played from scrimmage last year. He had a great preseason last year. He had a great interception, I think, early in the preseason. But this year, he's taken it to a totally different level. And I think he's going to be one of the surprises of camp.
Marcelino Ball was one of the surprises of camp last season. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do here in year 2. He's got speed. He showed, good instincts to get to the ball, all those types of things. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what he brings to the table. The whole linebacker room in San Francisco right now, you can easily make the case for 6 guys that should be making the roster coming out of camp. And most teams, that's crazy.
Flanagan Fowles or one of these guys, Curtis Robinson, somebody's going to get traded because these guys are probably too good to cut. Or if they are cut, there's going to be a bidding war on some of those guys because you've got you've got Orrin Burks and Demetrius Flanagan Fowles and Curtis Robinson. And those three guys are just three outstanding special teams linebackers. I mean, each one of those guys could be the best special team linebacker on any team they played on. And then you've got obviously Greenlaw and Warner and now Marcelino, who I think is going to start. So you got six right there. You're generally only going to carry six. And then you drafted Jalen Graham. He looked terrific in the minicamp. And D. Winters is a gap shooting Greenlaw type, tackle machine if he gets in shape. And he could be really lethal as a delayed blitzer under Wilkes' new system. They're loaded in a few spots, but they are super loaded at linebacker.
Yeah, no, they are, and that's like you're saying. Like even Curtis Robinson, there's some very good linebackers on this team that are not going to make the roster. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how this plays out for San Francisco.
Two last things: the NFL owners are expected to award the 2026 Super Bowl to Levi's next week at the owners meeting. What do you think? I'm glad that it's coming back. I like having the Super Bowl here. I think it's a weird configuration because they do a lot of the media row events, or at least they did last time in San Francisco, while the Super Bowl itself is obviously in Santa Clara. We're talking about 50 miles. I don't know if that's the record as far as the stadium, the Super Bowl site, a number of miles away from where most of the activities are. But it's great for the Bay Area, and it's obviously much needed.
Yeah, getting the Super Bowl, and it's awesome that the 49ers, they got Super Bowl 50, which was one of those milestone deals, right? Because of the timing in which that was. And then you go to this next one going to be Super Bowl 60. That's fantastic. And we'll see the direction that they go with this. I've heard a little bit about, it sounds like there might be more of the events taking place in San Francisco. One of the big changes in the Bay Area since the last Super Bowl was Chase Center being built in San Francisco, which provides a great venue for them to have a lot of their their previews and those types of things. Because typically nowadays when they do their pre-Super Bowl media sessions, they don't do it at the stadium any longer. They do it in an arena, so they can do those in San Francisco. And basically, the media can all be up in the Bay Area in San Francisco, and the only time that they need to go down to Santa Clara is for the game. And I think having that arena there could really make this a much better event for the 49ers and the NFL than it was back the first time they did this for Super Bowl 50.
All right, last question for you, and we appreciate your time. Give me, based on either the draft, the offseason, or just a perusal of the depth chart, give me a player or two that you are fired up to see this summer in Santa Clara.
Players that I'm fired up to see in Santa Clara this summer?
Yeah, like who do you maybe it could be somebody new. It could be somebody that you think is just going to take a huge step forward. Give me one or two guys that you're just you just can't wait till they put the pads on because you can't wait to see what that guy brings.
Well, we've been talking about a bunch of them already.
Sure.
We're going to start off with, my biggest one is I'm looking forward to seeing what happens with Trey Lance. Can't wait to see what he does. This is the biggest story of the offseason. What is Trey Lance? Is he the guy that how improved is he? How far has he grown? Is he still the same guy? What is Trey Lance? I think that's the number one story around the 49ers is going to be the quarterback position. What is Trey Lance? So that's number one. Other guys that I'm excited to see. I want to see what Jordan Mason can do in year two. Jordan Mason is the guy who came back last year as a rookie, made the roster as the season wore along. He started to get more and more of a role, especially without Elijah Mitchell in the offense. He became that guy that was the workhorse. He was the closer role. And is he able to? How does that competition play out between him and Elijah Mitchell? Is he able to get there? That's another one. Also, I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens at right tackle. How does this whole thing play out? Because you've got Colton McKivitz, who the 49ers have shown that they're very behind. So I'm looking forward to that. And then on top of it, what's that competition going to be? Their 49ers have a bunch of guys over on that right side of the offensive line. How's that going to shake out? Really excited to see that one as well. Over on the defensive side, Drake Jackson. I want to see what Drake Jackson does. I want to see if Drake Jackson is able to take that year 2 jump that Talanoa Hufanga took, where, he had some good numbers. I think the Friends are really going to be leaning on him this season. Can Drake Jackson be that guy? I think on the defensive side of the ball, that's the biggest question, and I can't wait to see how that plays out.
Yeah, every one of those is great. Drake especially. Drake is such a key guy, especially if they don't sign another edge rusher. Drake becomes like an integral guy, and so I think that I would absolutely concur on that. I'll go with 3 guys. I'm going to go with 1 offense, 1 defense, 1 special teams. Jake Moody. I mean, Jake Moody. You replaced the most dependable kicker in the game with a rookie, and you used a 3rd-round pick to do it. That's ballsy as hell. Jake Moody better be good. That's all I got to say, because Robbie Gould we know is good, and Jake Moody, if he's not good, that's going to be really bad. So I would say Jake Moody is absolutely. I don't normally spend a lot of time studying kickers, and I won't necessarily here, but once we get into the preseason, Jake Moody, I want to see what Jake Moody's got, and hopefully he's damn good, because he's billed as damn good, and he needs to be damn good. And then I'll go with the North Dakota State combo. I definitely Trey Lance. I mean, everything that, especially after reading Barrow's piece with Christensen and hearing about Trey making breakthroughs, it's like, that's exciting. That is exciting. We're talking about 6'4", 220, super athletic, great kid. I know Brock Purdy can play. Some people are saying Sam Darnold can play. I don't know anything about Trey Lance if he can play. All I know is I love his package of traits. I love who he is. I love what he's about. I love his skill set, and I'm super excited for his future based on those traits that he has. And it's not just the physical traits. To me, it's more of how important football is to him, how he's handled the success that Brock Purdy has had, what he has said, what he's gone about and done this offseason. Trey Lance. And then I'll say Spencer Wagee. I couldn't, to me, the one guy that was like, what the heck is that? And granted, I was a field and a half away watching the D-line drills, and I wasn't on the binoculars like I would be if it was a game day. But maybe I should bring the binoculars so I can see some of these practices a little bit better on the backfield. But Spencer Wagee was wearing 69 in minicamp. This guy tore up his knee a couple years ago. Didn't even have a sleeve on it. He didn't have anything. I mean, he was shooting off the ball. You can see, I could see from a field away the 166, 10-yard split. I mean, this guy comes firing off the football, but it's not just the firing off the football. It's the body lean. It's the hand placement. It's the hands and feet working together. I would love, if I could go into the Niner complex today, I would go right up to Chris Kocurek and say, I want to talk Spencer Wagee. Tell me what you saw. And I bet you $1 to a dime, this guy, that Chris would come out and be like, oh, Chris is going to be like really loving this kid, because he's what you want, man. He is what you want. This guy comes firing off the ball at 300 pounds, and he looks like he can play defensive end. So if they actually have a high motor combo defensive end, defensive tackle, interior rusher, exterior rusher in Wagee, and he actually in the preseason and when the games actually start looks as good as he looked just running at rookie minicamp, they've got an incredible steal there, and that to me is super exciting. So I'm looking for Moody, Lance, and Wagee.
Yeah, I think the Wagee one is an interesting one there too, because of his ability in terms of, you look at what he does. I think he's a guy who can push maybe for a spot along the end of the depth chart as an interior pass rusher or an interior defensive lineman. That's, I think, his spot. I don't think he's going to be an edge guy with the 49ers. I think he's going to be more of an interior guy. So yeah. I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do there. I think that's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. The movement ability at 300 pounds, even from, 150 yards away, it was like, what am I watching here? And it's mini camp, so I never like to get too over my skis on mini camp. I thought Brock looked great in mini camp last year, and I just kind of, I'm going to wait till training camp. But you know what? For this kid, I mean, maybe it's because I did an interview with him and I kind of have an inkling into what makes him tick. But there's some really exciting things about Spencer Wagee. That's all I'll say. Check him out this summer. Jack, tell people where they can find your channel, where they can find your all your Niner information and breakdowns. I saw you wrote a piece on 5 veterans. You had Marcus Peters and some edge rushers in there that the Niners ought to consider trying to sign. I totally concur with that piece. Very strong. Tell people where they can find your stuff and what you got going, the rest of the week on the channel.
Yeah, get over to 49ers.pressdemocrat.com. That's the website for the Inside the 49ers blog through the Santa Rosa Press Democrat. So that's where you get all of the written stuff. And then you can follow my YouTube channel. It's super easy. It's the same thing. Inside the 49ers. It should pop up. Inside the 49ers with Jack Hammer is the title. And then on Twitter, JackHammer_NFL as well. I've been doing a little bit. I'll be on at 1:00 here with Grant for a live show over on it's going to be dual streaming that, so you can jump on mine, follow my channel, give me some views instead of Grant today. No, it'll be fun. Grant and
Grant's got enough views. Go view Jack. Go view it on Jack's channel.
Yeah, and Grant and I've been talking about how we want to do our shows, and we'll see how today's works out, just kind of based off of some of the tweets and Twitter this last week. I think it should be a fun conversation. One of the things that I don't know about you, Larry, but one of the things that I think when it comes to 49ers content creation is that everybody's buddy, and sometimes everybody agrees with each other too much. So I think it'd be fun to see a show where people disagree and can keep it civil. And it's not a personal thing, but we can tell each other that we're full of shit every once in a while. And I think that'd be a lot of fun. And based on some of the back and forth today and over this week, I think one of the two of us might say that to the other guy. So it should be fun.
Nice. Well, I've at 12:15, 10 minutes from now, I'll be on the Ryan Hensley channel, and we don't see things the same way. So it could be juicy. Jack, good stuff, brother. Always great to see you. We'll see you in Santa Clara maybe next Tuesday. I forget exactly when the minicamp starts. I just got the email on it, but we'll see you for OTAs, and we think your content's outstanding, man. Have a great rest of your Friday and weekend, and we'll see you down in Santa Clara next week.
Yeah, you too. Look forward to seeing you up there.
There you go. The great Jack Hammer. Phenomenal. All right, let's go to the starred chats. Some people saying, you owe me $5. You did. I got into a conversation with Jack, and the chat is moving so damn fast, and we have so many people in there throwing different things out, and I'm moving up and down, and Jack's referencing things. So I got behind in the chat. So instead of trying to go through it and find them as I'm talking to him, I'm just saved it for the end. So I'm not ignoring your chats. I'm going to them right now. And I never, ever ignore your chats, and I never would. So let's go right to it. Some are super chats. Some are just ones that I start. Darren Ty says, Patrick Bailey is up tonight for the Giants. Let's go, Larry. Go Giants. You know what? Bailey was drafted by Farhan. Joey Bart's got some kind of an injury. Bailey's been swinging it. Switch hitter, I believe. Good defensive catcher. Line drive, left-handed bat. At least maybe he's switch hitter. I think I definitely saw him hit from the left side. To me, he looks like he looks kind of like stature-wise, almost like an AJ Pierzynski, like a big catcher with a really nice left-handed line drive stroke. That's what he looks like to me. He looks a lot like a Pierzynski. Hopefully, he doesn't hit into the Pierzynski massive amounts of double plays. But I'm looking forward to it. I'll watch it tonight. GD5 Sports says Trey may turn out to be like Steve McNair, but Brock looks like a more mobile, young Drew Brees. I'm hoping Trey turns into the next Mahomes. I'm not saying he's Mahomes, but Mahomes was super raw at Texas Tech and has benefited greatly from Andy Reid and Alex Smith and those weapons. And Trey's route has been far more circuitous, but doesn't mean he can't get there. Chris Hansen, Larry is hungover. Did go out and have a few pops last night, but not hungover. My wife, though, she was definitely hungover. Eric Hernandez says Larry had too many drinks with Damon Bruce last night. Damon's like, I'm getting you drunk tonight. I'm like, bro, no. But we did have a few drinks. We had a few pops. 187 says Trey is fixed after a few days. Laughing emojis. You never know. You never know where a guy is going to find his development. It could be, you're right. To say that all of a sudden you're going to snap your fingers, he's just going to be instantly great. Yeah, it's probably not likely, but doesn't mean that it wasn't super beneficial or he hasn't had a serious breakthrough and that he's not going to find a totally different level. So there you go. Third string all pro. You're hating on a guy that won games. Was almost rookie of the year, was stat wise the top quarterback in the league. Stop with the hate. Yeah, I mean, and that's anybody who's critiquing Brock Purdy. It's like, dude, do you have any freaking idea how difficult it is to win in the NFL? And then multiply that times 10 as a rookie and multiply that times 10 more when you're just coming off the bench and you hadn't played in 2 months. That's what Brock Purdy did. He didn't play. And that game that he came off the bench, that game was in December. He hadn't played a snap since training camp, since the preseason. That was August. That means he sat for September and October and all of November. He sat for 3 months, didn't know he was going to get his opportunity, was called off the bench and played great, and then didn't lose. Most of the time in that situation, people would be over their skis for a guy. And yet people are, he ain't this, he ain't that. All right. Marv says, why are you guys only talking trading? Oh, I already read this one. Appreciate that, Marv. We did get that one already. Manny, that was Marv. We got that already. Okay, now let's go to Manny. Manny Fresh. Why do black quarterbacks get one shot, but white quarterbacks get shot after shot? Trey played 4 games, labeled a bust. Darnold has been garbage, but he's going to start. Well, in that's this situation. But, I mean, Trey's getting another opportunity. And I don't know that is the case. I mean, Jacoby Brissett's been on a bunch of teams. He's getting opportunities. Geno Smith got another opportunity. Deshaun Watson is the highest paid player in the game, and he got an opportunity after having like several issues with off the field. And he was rewarded for that with the biggest contract in the history of the league. So I don't know that you're right, Manny, to be honest. But I do, and I wouldn't see it as race as you do, but I think it is fair to ask why Sam Darnold, why people really still believe in Sam Darnold. That to me is mystifying. That I think that part of it I think is fair. Cisco Kid, going to our first Niners home game this year from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. What hotel is walking distance to Levi's? Going with my family on Christmas. Eastern time, was that EST? Party to do. Oh, as far as to eat, party to. Oh, I got you. Well, the Hyatt is right there, isn't it? The Hyatt Santa Clara is right there on Great American Parkway. That's walking distance. The Sheridan is really nice. That's where I do not Sheridan, the Hilton. The Hilton is where 95.7 The Game, where me and Lo Neal have done the pregame show this last year. And that's a really nice place for sure. And it's definitely walking distance. I walk after the game right in, across the parking lot and go in. It's 100 yards. I would probably recommend one of those two, the Hyatt or the Hilton, right there. There's a few though right next to the stadium, but those you can't go wrong with the Hyatt or the Hilton. I guess I'm a little partial to the Hilton because our pregame show's there. Come downstairs and watch our pregame show. Go check out 95.7 The Game. Gammon Brown. I don't even know if I'll be doing it this year, but I did it last year. Gammon Brown says $2. Why don't you both do fan call-ins regularly? I want to. I'd like to do fan call-ins like every day. It's just a matter of, do we have enough fans to call in? I mean, I don't know if I have enough fans yet to call in. I may have to build up my level. How many fans do you think you need? How many subscribers? We have 18,000 subscribers right now. Is that enough to do call-ins regularly and get enough calls to have it kind of float the whole show? But we'll do that, Gammon. I like that. I like that idea. I want to do more of that. So let's do it. And then we got Roadhog. Is it pro or con that Steve Wilkes will coach from the booth, not the sideline? There's arguments for both. I think it's pro because you can see the coverage, and Steve's former defensive back, so I think that's important to him. So there you go. Ryan Hensley. Brock Purdy isn't as much of a deep threat as Trey Lance. He throws less than 10 yards 70% of the time. Trey less than 50%. That's the difference. Oh, my God. Gammon Brown. Jack Hammer's job is mine in a few years. Can't wait to retire from the Army. Krug, please run 1 mile before talking about athletes. Lost touch. What? I ran Beta Breakers. It was 8 miles. Run 5 miles. I used to run 5 miles every day. I got a treadmill right behind this wall that I'm on every single day. Obviously, not a lot of faith in my conditioning. not a lot of belief in my physical conditioning. I may look fat, but man, I'm thin. All right, there you go. All right, that's going to do it for us. Join me right now on the Ryan Hensley channel. We'll break it all down. But first, we get a word from our sponsors on the Krug Show. And thanks to Pig in a Pickle.
with a Sunday dinner. That means no matter how busy you were, no matter where the hell you were, you came to dinner on a Sunday night. Yeah, Sunday dinner without sausage, it's like a church without God. You know, how can you go to church if you don't believe in God? You know, and along with the sausage also became the discussions. That was discussion night. You know, it wasn't a typical family that you sit there and you're quiet, you know, and you don't talk with a mouthful. Oh no, man. Italians talk when they're eating. Italians even talk when they're sleeping. And definitely we talk with our hands. So if we can't express it through our mouth, through our lips, we express it with our hands. So, and that's what sausage is, really. It's an expression, you know, that life is good.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you won't get exactly what you asked for. Here for whatever you bring me, getting handled. I answer the no.